Hello again, everyone. Today it's time to start talking about sexism. And is your brain sexist? It's just really kind of a stupid question if you even put effort into thinking about how your brain works and the history of the evolution of man and women. Like, we just naturally categorize things. That's what we do. That way it's easier to associate objects with certain uses and dangers. And the same can be said about people. But here we go. We're going to watch Lacey Green and break down this video.
A lot of people with opinions about gender, but today we science, and I hear you do some sciencing now and then, Vanessa.
You could say that.
Hey everyone, Lacey here with Vanessa Hill of PBS's Braincraft.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining me. So the old saying goes, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And there's a lot of debate about this, right? Is there such a thing as a female brain or a male brain?
Well, it's difficult to categorize a brain as either male or female. So let's say you cut a brain open and you look at two parts. You wouldn't be able to say if it was male or female or even from a transgender or gender-neutral person.
Right.
There's a small difference in one of our areas of the brain, the corpus callosum. It connects your two hemispheres, and it's slightly bigger in women, but we can't really infer anything on how your brain functions from that.
Alright, so I want to start by saying they just prove that there's no difference between the male and the female mind. Pretty much. I mean, a slight difference, but not enough. They never talk about the true differences lying in hormones and that sort of thing. Another thing they don't even talk about is gender and sex are two different things. Sex is biological. You're born male or you're born female. Now, you can gender as something other than your biological sex, and that's fine. And I really think society needs to move to be more inclusive to people that have gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria, I've got the definition up right here, is the condition of feeling one's emotional and psychological identity as male or female to be opposite to one's biological sex. So basically that means if you're born female and you feel like a male, by all means, identify with that and roll on, and vice versa. And some people are even right in the middle. They're gender fluid, and that's fine. Again, none of this is discussed. None of this is talked about. There's no research cited. And again, I'll have all this in the low bar so you can look at it yourselves. And another thing I highly encourage you to do is Google Vanessa Hill, and you'll find her. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can check out her scientific credentials.
So if there's no such thing as a female or a male brain, then what's going on with differences that we see in people's behavior?
So the differences we see in people's behavior are mostly a result of our environment and not our biology.
Which then goes on to produce stereotypes, right? Or in other words, widely held ideas about how someone will behave because of their gender.
Exactly, and reminding people of their gender, of these gender stereotypes, creates something called a stereotype threat, where people tend to perform in ways that just reinforces this stereotype.
Okay, the stereotype threat is a real thing. It's sad that a lot of prejudices are formed upon stereotypes, and people don't give other people a chance based on certain stereotypes. Stereotypes are developed for a reason. It's a way of categorizing people that you had experiences with, and it could be due to the clothing that they're wearing, the color of their skin, the color of their hair, the color of their eyes. There's just so many things out there. While I don't agree with stereotyping someone is a good thing and that we should actually act upon those stereotypes, you should really give people a chance on an individual basis. And if you don't, then you're a prejudiced motherfucker. And that could obviously be translated into racism. But stereotyping is a way of categorizing, and we as a species have evolved to categorize things to keep us safe. To put things in categories of, is this safe to use? Is this safe to eat? This is clothing. This is tools, I don't... It just seems like so basic. Again, there will be links down in the low bar that you can check out on all the the research that's been done on this. There was actually a couple really good papers that I read.
For example, many studies have found that males and females perform similarly in math tests, but when female students are asked to report their gender at the top of a math test before they start, their performance is worse.
So all of a sudden, when a woman has to identify her sex on a math quiz, she's going to do worse because society has told her so? Like, I don't... That's saying there's a lot of pressure that goes into someone's taking a math quiz when they identify their sex. Now, I could see maybe something other than math that's not... I mean, 5 plus 5 is 10. It's not all of a sudden 2 plus 5 equals 10. You know what I mean? Like, really. Okay, I did find some articles on this gender threat and the math tests. And they make a convincing argument. But every time I've clicked on the links to go to the studies, I'm hit with a paywall. So I'm not actually able to look at these studies. And there's nothing, as far as hard evidence given in the articles, it all is very... It just implies a lot. But again, and it gives you no hard stats.
So basically, just like the math stuff, we're seeing how people's gender-based attitudes are creating real-world differences in girls' performance, but also their interests and their behaviors too, right?
There's something called implicit bias that comes into play in a big way. Now, implicit bias is our bias that we have in our judgment and behavior towards people that we don't even realize we have.
Right, which is really sneaky. Even people who are super aware of it, we're not immune. We're not immune to these influences.
Again, you're just talking about stereotypes and categories, so I just don't see the relevance. You're kind of just repeating yourself through this whole fucking video.
In the 80s, some orchestras introduced blind auditions, where candidates would audition behind a screen to conceal their gender. Following this, the number of female musicians in the top 5 orchestras in the United States jumped by 20%.
Oh my God.
Can't really argue that. I did look it up. It does seem to be very true. But again, her question is your brain wired to be sexist? And so far the answer is no. You were taught to be that way. And that does make a case that things can be turned around, and they actually have been. I guess that's what gets me so riled up about this whole third wave feminism, is that you totally disregard how far you've come and want to nitpick and cherry pick all these tiny little friggin' arguments to make a case that you're still being oppressed, that there's still this gender pay gap, and it's all fucking ridiculous. You're not fighting for equal rights anymore. You're fighting for more than your fair share.
And it's not just a gender thing either. This spans across various social groups as well.
Yeah, it does. And there's actually studies that have looked into tipping in restaurants. And in a lot of them, they found that both black and white customers in restaurants tip white servers more than black servers, even when people rated that they were happier with the black servers' work.
I really hope you were paying close attention to what she just said, because she said both blacks and whites tip the white server more, even in cases where they thought the black server did better. That's just to further prove the point that we work off of categorizing and stereotypes. Now, I work in the service industry, and we have a pretty well diverse crew, and it doesn't seem like that happens where I'm at, but that's definitely not going to be the case for everyone, and it just further goes to prove that your mind isn't really sexist. It just works off of categorizing everything. It's the way we have evolved. And I will make the argument, or help their argument, and say that we need to move past that, get over yourself, get over your stereotypes. You need to get to know people on an individual case. You could be missing out on a lot of great experiences.
This actually reminds me of the elections too. I don't know if you're following it, but there was recently this big outcry again that Hillary is always screaming and shouting when she's just talking. And to me, that says that gender stereotypes have a huge effect on how we perceive what's going on in front of our very eyes.
Yeah, to me that seems really unfair, because when you think about it, all of the candidates perform in the same way. They behave in the same way.
Yeah, and some of them even yell more.
I see what you did there, Lacey. That was sneaky. You complain about men, I'm going to assume it's men, saying that Hillary is always yelling and screaming, but then you within moments, go on to complain about Donald Trump yelling and screaming. So is that your own sexism, wired in your brain? Or do you think that's just a stereotype that you've garnered from all the social media pushes about how loud and abusive Donald Trump is? Kind of makes me wonder.
I kind of think that we keep looking for differences in this research because we kind of want it to be true. Instead, we keep trapping ourselves in these gender identities that we've created, and they're continually reinforced by our implicit bias.
This is really interesting stuff. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us,
course.
Vanessa. I really appreciate it.
What really makes me sad about this video is there was actually a lot of good points made towards stereotypes. And a lot of arguments could be made in their favor. But it's the agenda that they're trying to push, and the title, it's clickbaity, there's third wave feminism shit where, is your mind sexist? No, there are sexist stereotypes, and apparently we're wired to move towards stereotypes as a culture, and actually as a species, not a culture. The stereotypes are a cultural thing. So yeah, it's just sad. It really is sad. If they had made this video about stereotypes in general and not sexism, which they're trying to push, I probably would have been like, wow, you made some really good points. But it's the fucked up narrative that destroys this video for me.